The Cleveland Browns lost to the Denver Broncos for the 26th time in 33 games. But I had fun, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Hey guys, Oliver here, aka UK Browns NFL, and this is my review of the Browns' 41-32 loss against the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. The Cleveland Browns lost in record-breaking fashion in a Monday Night Football game that, despite the loss, was a thoroughly enjoyable game. Staying up until 5 AM can be pretty difficult, but it helps when there's over 70 points scored in a game where both teams traded 70-plus yard touchdowns on consecutive plays. Jameis Winston set the Cleveland Browns franchise record for passing yards in a game with 497 yards, just shy of 500-yard passing game. Over 200 yards more than Deshaun Watson's highest total in 19 games for the Browns, and over 300 more yards than his highest total in 7 games this year. Winston has overtaken Joe Flacco for the most passing yards through a player's first 5 starts with a new team with 1,680. You know, that is 2 quarterbacks now that have come into this offense and are now 1 and 2 on that list. A true detriment to Watson's play for the Browns, and just an overwhelming indicator to this front office that, starting Watson again would just be malpractice at this point. Jameis set a new career high and became the first Browns quarterback since Josh McCown in 2015 to throw for over 400 yards. He has now tied Peyton Manning for the most games in NFL history with over 450 passing yards and 4 touchdowns with 3. His 497 yards was the second most passing yards by a quarterback in a Monday Night Football game in NFL history, only behind Tom Brady's 517 yards in 2011. Winston has set 2 of the Browns' top 8 single yardage games in just 5 starts this season. He, of course, threw 3 interceptions and 2 pick sixes in this game. The Broncos had 171 interception return yards against him, and the 668 combined passing yards plus interception return yards off of his passes are the most of any quarterback in a single game in NFL history. A pretty Jameis Winston stat, if you ask me. Sorry to overload you with, so many of, these stats, but it is genuinely insane just how record-breaking this performance by Jameis was in all different kinds of ways. We all knew Jerry Jeudy was going to want to have a good performance against his former team, and boy did he have one. 9 catches for 235 yards and a touchdown, the most receiving yards for any NFL player against their former team in NFL history. He set the record for the 4th most receiving yards in a game in Cleveland Browns history and became just the 3rd player to have over 200 yards receiving in a game for the Browns, joining Amari Cooper and Josh Gordon. Jeudy leads the NFL in receiving yards since Jameis Winston took over the starting job, and despite the Browns having a bye week in that time, 614 receiving yards in 5 games. Not to pile on Watson, but Jeudy has had more receiving yards in this game than Watson has had passing yards in any of his 7 starts this year. Just an outstanding performance from Jeudy. I've said it for weeks now that he's your wide receiver 1 next year. The Browns got a lot of stick for his extension in the off-season, but his current numbers with Winston would average out to a 2,000-yard season, and of course the likelihood of that actually happening would be low, but he is now only 120 yards short of that elusive first 1,000-yard season. And if we can get this level of production out of Jeudy for $17 million a year going forward, then that is a bargain. Jeudy's performance did mean that Elijah Moore's 100-yard day went slightly under the radar. You can point to the second pick 6 where he should have touched a defender when he was down. But other than that, he too was excellent in this game, and making an argument for an extension this off-season, depending if the number is right. David Njoku had 9 catches in this game, including 2 great touchdown grabs. But he was targeted 17 times. He did have a few drops in this game, but other than that, the two touchdown grabs were pretty great. Of course, this all came, with a loss, and with that loss, the Browns now secured their 22nd losing season since reactivation in 1999, the most in the NFL in that time frame. And, a loss to the Steelers this week would officially eliminate them from the playoffs, confirming the season as a failure, as we all kind of knew it was at this point. But at the end of the day, even with a win, this would still be a 4-win team. At this point, these games are about evaluating the players and position groups and, perhaps playing spoiler for a few teams, and whilst hopefully having as much fun as we can in the process. So, despite the loss, this game was a good example of that. So let's get into this game itself. The Browns defense start the game with a 3-and-out, but a great 61-yard punt from the Broncos pins the Browns back at their 10-yard line for their opening drive. Jerry Jeudy kicks off his massive game with a 44-yard reception on the Browns' first offensive play of the game. The drive then gets stalled out at the Broncos' 29-yard line, and Dustin Hopkins continues his run of bad form by missing a 47-yard field goal. The Broncos then strike first with a 12-play, 6-minute drive in which Bo Nix converts multiple third downs, capped off by a 2-yard touchdown run by Javonte Williams to put the Broncos up 7-0. The Browns responded with a 5-play, 70-yard drive, which was boosted by a 44-yard play to Elijah Moore on third down to put the ball at the Broncos' 8-yard line, and then Winston finished the drive with a pinpoint throw down the middle to Njoku to tie the score at 7 apiece. Moving into the second quarter, after exchanging punts, Denzel Ward was able to get his hand in front of a pass intended for Troy Franklin, which resulted in the ball popping up, and Greg Newsome was able to bring it in for the interception at the Browns' 31-yard line. The Browns were able to take advantage of the turnover with a field goal after a drive in which Michael Woods picked up a big 3rd and 10, and Jerome Ford had the Browns' longest running play of the day with a 21-yard gain on 2nd and 10. Both teams then traded 3-and-outs before the Broncos scored their second touchdown of the game after a drive where they had 3 consecutive 15-plus yard receptions before veteran fullback Michael Burton scored his second career touchdown from 1 yard out to put the Broncos back in front 14-10. Then an encouraging Browns drive that saw Jamari Thrash make his second NFL career grab to keep the chains moving on third down, as well as multiple catches for Jerry Jeudy, was unfortunately spoiled by a Winston pick six after he had quite a bit of time in the pocket, and ended up throwing, a pass that it was intended for Jordan Akins, but Nick Bonito was able to read it the whole way, was able to pick it off, return it for a 71-yard touchdown, and put the Broncos up 21-10 with a minute and a half left in the first half. Credit to Winston, he was able to immediately flush the mistake and respond with a great 2-minute drill. Multiple chump plays by Jerry Jeudy before a great touchdown grab by Njoku to cut the score to 21-17 going into halftime. The Browns came out of the half with back-to-back 3-and-outs, and then the fun begins. A 93-yard touchdown for the Broncos after a perfect throw from Bo Nix to Marvin Mims down the middle to put the Broncos up 28-17. But in what was a wild sequence of events, the Browns immediately answer back with a 70-yard touchdown to Jerry Jeudy on the very next play to cut the score to 28-25 and truly stun the Denver crowd as Jerry Jeudy hit the Deshaun Jackson fall into the end zone celebration. Moving into the fourth quarter, after multiple punts and a Broncos field goal to push the score to 31-25, Denzel Ward intercepted a wild deep ball from Bo Nix at the Browns' 28-yard line. Then, on another Browns drive carried by multiple big plays from Winston to Jeudy, a wide-open Nick Chubb caught the ball, strolled into the end zone for a 5-yard touchdown grab, giving the Browns a 1-point lead in what was becoming a crazy back-and-forth game. But the Broncos were able to answer back with an 11-play, 6-minute drive, which results in a field goal and then retaking the lead 34-32 with just under 3 minutes to go in the game. Winston then throws his second pick six of the game after Jaquan McMillan made a great play to pick off an out route to Elijah Moore, and then was able to take it 44 yards to the house after Elijah Moore or nobody touched him down by contact. This put the score, at the final number of 41-32 and essentially ended the game with just under 2 minutes left. The Browns were able to drive down to the Broncos' 2-yard line after this before Winston, sealed the loss with his third interception of the day, which Jerry Jeudy, of all people, actually chased down Cody Barton and prevented it from becoming the third pick six of the day. The Broncos then knelt the final play to complete their 26th win over the Cleveland Browns. This was always going to be a very tough game for the Browns. There's a reason they've only beaten the Broncos 5 times since 1974, including just one win at Denver in the last 9 games that they played there. The Browns put themselves in a position to go and win this game, but in the end, defensive breakdowns, having no run game, and 2 pick sixes from Winston proved to be too much for the Browns, to win this game. It's not that the Browns defense played particularly awful, but another 60-plus yard touchdown given up, their 4th now across their last 3 losses, as well as multiple other big plays given up, including on the Broncos' 4th quarter drive to take the lead with a field goal with 3 minutes left when the Browns were leading 32-31. The Broncos had 400 yards of offense in this game, and the Browns finished the day with 0 sacks. I said in my preview that the Browns needed to get pressure on Bo Nix and make his job a lot harder, but they weren't able to do that effectively and couldn't get the stops when they needed to. Whilst I've said all year that I think this defense has been one of the least of the Browns' issues, the drop-off in performance from some players and the defense as a whole from last year has been pretty glaring. And, with the drop-off in the secondary being particularly noticeable, Emerson was pretty poor in this game, and he has been pretty poor this year considering the standards he's set himself for his, in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Whilst Newsom played better in this game, he too isn't particularly having a great season. I do think it is worth mentioning again that Denzel Ward was once again fantastic in this game. A great play that led to Newsom's interception, as well as another one of his own as well. He's been a top 3 corner in the NFL this season, and it's just a damn shame that the Browns' record is essentially going to prevent him from receiving the recognition that he deserves. Has Jim Schwartz's scheme been figured out? I'm not so sure. Whilst the defensive struggles do worry me, I'm not ready to jump ship and, call for a change at defensive coordinator after just 1 down year compared to a pretty historically good first year last year. Jameis Winston's 2 pick sixes, of course, played a massive role in this loss. The first to Nick Bonito, giving the Broncos an 11-point lead in the first half, and the second at the end to McMillan to essentially end the game before his final interception, officially sealed it. But at the end of the day, if you live by the Jameis Winston sword, you die by the Jameis Winston sword. This is the same guy that has had the only 30 touchdown and 30 interception season in NFL history. If you ask him to throw the ball 58 times, he's probably going to throw some touchdowns, but he's also probably going to throw some interceptions as well. The 58 passing attempts are the 2nd most in a game in Browns history, and if you didn't watch this game, you'd probably assume it was because the Browns were trailing big early in the game, which wasn't actually the case. Yes, the Broncos led by 9+ points on 3 different occasions in this game, but that was only actually for a total of about 4 minutes of play with how the Browns were able to immediately respond. The reason Winston threw the ball 58 times is because the Browns simply cannot run the football. The Browns had 77 rushing yards on 23 attempts for an average of 3.3 yards per carry. Just not good enough. You need to be at around 4 yards a carry for this to work within this offense. This Browns run game is averaging 77 rushing yards a game over the last 6 games and haven't had a 100-yard rushing game as a team since the Eagles game in week 6. The Browns have only gone over 100 rushing yards 3 times this season, and all 3 of those games came within the first 6 weeks of the season. What was already a pretty bad run game has actually gotten worse, and it's becoming a detriment to this offense. It's reminiscent of last year where the Browns had to rely on a 38-year-old Joe Flacco coming off of his couch, to throw the ball 40 times a game because they were unable to run the football. In 5 starts last year, Flacco threw the ball 204 times and the Browns averaged 75 rushing yards a game. Jameis Winston in 5 starts this year has thrown the ball 218 times and the Browns averaged just 77 rushing yards a game. They cannot continue to rely on quarterbacks having to throw the ball 40 times a game in order for this team to win games. It's just not going to work. They need to address this run game in the off-season. It might be, the single biggest priority behind what they do at quarterback. As someone who has said for over a month now that I'd re-sign Jameis to be your bridge for 2025-26, in order for the team to be competitive, if they do that, they are going to have to revamp this run game, which means investing in this offensive line as well as the running back room, this off-season. This is a pretty decent draft for running backs, so drafting one would make sense. And whilst pass blocking is obviously a need as well, this interior of the offensive line in particular needs revamping in order to improve the run game. So I think investment in both is necessary. Look, as I said earlier, this team was still a 4-win team, even if they won this game. The playoffs weren't a realistic outcome weeks ago. So whilst the Browns did lose this game, it was good to see them, not only put up big numbers, but look like a team that actually has some fight left in them. That's something that we didn't see in the first half of the season, and, was the biggest reason why it appeared that everybody's jobs were on the line. I don't think it really matters what the final record is now, as long as the team puts up a fight over these last 5 games and, gives us something to evaluate moving forward. The team being bad is what it is. I can deal with that. What I can't deal with is watching a team that has quit. And, credit to this Browns team. They played like a team that had a lot of fight in them this week. And, that led to a rather enjoyable game despite the loss. We still have games against all 3 of our division opponents left, as well as games against the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Plenty of opportunities to play spoiler, get some good wins. Plenty of opportunities to enjoy, what has otherwise been a pretty crappy season. We move on to Steelers week, a great chance to complete a season sweep over the team that I hate the most. It might be a disappointing season in the grand scheme of things, but that would certainly make it a season to remember regardless. That would do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free and it really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can connect and interact with me on social media. I'm trying to build a community of Browns fans, and as I always say, even if I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, have a great week, and most importantly, go Browns.